It was a day that began like any other, calm, routine, and entirely uneventful. My son Ethan was his usual curious self, spending his time sketching his wild imaginations on paper or fiddling with his collection of toy cars. I had no reason to think anything unusual would happen that afternoon. But as parents, we sometimes forget how perceptive children can be, how they notice the small cracks in the walls we work so hard to keep sturdy. Ethan's quiet demeanor that evening should have been my first clue that something was wrong, but I brushed it off, assuming he was tired from a long day. The truth didn't reveal itself until much later, and when it did, it left me shaken. Ethan's eyes were filled with a mix of confusion and sadness as he hesitated to share what he had seen. His voice trembled as he tried to form the words, but the weight of the secret he carried was far too heavy for his little shoulders. He had stumbled upon something no child should ever have to witness, something that would forever change the way he saw the world, and us, his parents. I wasn't prepared for the storm that would follow. As he finally began to recount what he had seen, each word struck me like a thunderbolt. My heart raced, my thoughts spiraling out of control. How could this have happened without us knowing? How could we have let it slip through the cracks? The moment he finished speaking, I knew our lives would never be the same again. Little did I know, the truth wasn't just about what Ethan had seen. It was about the secrets we thought were buried deep, ones we never imagined could resurface. Ethan's small frame seemed even smaller as he sat on the edge of the couch, his hands clenched tightly around the fabric of his shorts. The way his lips quivered as he spoke made my chest tighten, and I found myself holding my breath, not knowing if I was ready to hear what he had to say. "Mom," he finally whispered, his eyes wide and wet, "I saw something. I wasn't supposed to." At first I didn't understand. His words were vague, his tone uncertain, as if he himself was unsure of what he had witnessed. I gently pressed him for details, my voice steady but my mind racing. "Where were you, sweetheart? What did you see?" I asked, trying to mask the rising panic in my chest. Slowly he began piecing the story together. He had been playing outside, chasing the late afternoon sun, when he heard raised voices coming from the garage. Curious, as children often are, he peeked through the slightly ajar door, his innocent curiosity drawing him into something far more complicated than his young mind could comprehend. What Ethan described next sent chills down my spine. He talked about shadows, tense conversations, and a moment where someone, he wasn't sure who, did something that didn't sit right with him. His descriptions were fragmented, but they painted a picture vivid enough for me to feel the weight of it. Someone had been in our home, someone we hadn't invited. The garage, which we thought of as a place for tools and bikes, had turned into a stage for something far darker. I couldn't help but wonder how I hadn't noticed anything. Was it a fleeting encounter, or was it something that had been happening under our noses for a while? Ethan's words didn't just raise questions, they uncovered fears I hadn't known existed. My husband, who had been silent during Ethan's story, exchanged a look with me that spoke volumes. We both knew this wasn't something we could brush off or explain away. But the bigger question remained. Who were these people, and why were they here? The pieces of the puzzle felt too scattered to put together, yet the urgency to understand was impossible to ignore. That night, sleep was elusive. Ethan's words circled my mind endlessly, each one raising more questions than answers. My husband, Mark, seemed equally disturbed, though his silence spoke louder than any words could. He sat on the edge of the couch, staring at his phone, not scrolling, not reading, just staring. I wanted to ask him what he was thinking, but I feared what his response might be. There was a quiet tension between us that hadn't been there before, and it only added to the weight of the evening. The next morning, Ethan was unusually quiet. He avoided our questions about what he saw and retreated into his room, refusing to join us for breakfast. I tried to coax him out with his favorite pancakes, but he only shrugged and said he wasn't hungry. Mark suggested we give him some space, but I wasn't so sure. Something had changed in Ethan, and I didn't know how to reach him. As the day wore on, Ethan's behavior became increasingly strange. He began drawing on scraps of paper, intricate images of shadowy figures and what looked like the outline of our backyard. When I asked him about them, he only said, "They're just dreams." But I could see it in his eyes. These weren't just dreams to him, they felt real. Meanwhile, Mark seemed to be battling his own demons. He'd taken his laptop into the study and spent hours there, typing away furiously. When I asked what he was working on, he dismissed me with a vague, "just some office stuff." But I caught a glimpse of his screen once. He wasn't working. He was researching something, though he closed the browser before I could see what it was. The distance between the three of us grew. Each passing hour felt like a lifetime, with questions piling up and no answers in sight. What was Ethan so afraid of? What was Mark hiding? And most hauntingly, what had Ethan really witnessed that night? Every unanswered question felt like a thread pulling at the fabric of our family, and I couldn't shake the feeling that if one of us didn't speak up soon, everything might unravel. That evening, the air in the house was heavier than ever, as though all the unanswered questions were pressing down on us. Ethan remained in his room, and I could hear faint whispers from behind the door. It sounded like he was talking to himself, or worse, to someone, or something I couldn't see. My heart raced as I debated whether to go in or leave him alone. I decided to knock gently, but there was no answer. When I opened the door a crack, he was sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring at one of his drawings, his face pale and unreadable. I wanted to comfort him, but I didn't know how to break through the wall he had built around himself. Mark's behavior was just as unnerving. He barely left the study, and when he finally came out, he looked exhausted and nervous, like he had just unearthed something he couldn't process. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and strained. I followed him into the living room, where he handed me a printed page. It was an article about strange phenomena in our neighborhood, sightings of figures that seemed to appear and disappear without explanation. My stomach twisted as I skimmed the details, especially when I recognized the descriptions: shadows, flickering lights, the eerie feeling of being watched. They were exactly what Ethan had been drawing. Before I could ask Mark what he was implying, the power in the house suddenly flickered, plunging us into darkness for a moment before the lights came back on. A cold chill swept through the room, and I felt the hair on my arms stand on end. Ethan appeared in the doorway, clutching one of his drawings. "It's here," he said softly, his voice trembling. Mark and I froze. "What do you mean it's here?" Mark asked, his voice breaking slightly. Ethan didn't respond, but his wide eyes darted toward the backyard. Mark grabbed a flashlight and gestured for me to follow. We stepped outside cautiously, the night unnervingly quiet, except for the sound of our own breathing. The beam of the flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating patches of the yard. Then, in the far corner, we saw something that made us both stop in our tracks. It wasn't a shadow. It was something tangible, moving, and very real. My heart pounded as fear gripped me, and I realized we were no longer safe in our own home. Mark's flashlight trembled in his hand as the beam fixed on the figure in the yard. It was tall and cloaked in an unnatural darkness, as if the light couldn't penetrate it. My breath caught in my throat, and I instinctively reached for Mark's arm. Ethan stood behind us, his small frame trembling, but his gaze was fixed on the entity as though he'd seen it before. "It's the one from my dreams," Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. My stomach churned. Dreams or warnings? Mark stepped forward hesitantly, his flashlight flickering as if the batteries were failing. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice firm but tinged with fear. The figure didn't move, but the air around us grew colder, almost suffocating. Ethan tugged at my hand. "Mom, don't go closer. It doesn't like that," he pleaded, his voice urgent. I turned to him, desperate for answers. "What do you mean, Ethan? How do you know this?" He looked at me with tear-filled eyes. "Because it talks to me," he confessed, his voice cracking. "It's been telling me things about us. It said it wants something, or someone." A chill ran down my spine as Mark stopped abruptly. The figure had started moving, not toward us, but toward the house. Without thinking, I grabbed Ethan and rushed inside, slamming the door behind us. Mark followed quickly, bolting the lock, But deep down, I knew a lock wouldn't keep whatever this was out. Ethan clutched his drawing, holding it out to me. "It's here because of this," he said, his voice trembling. The paper was covered in frantic, jagged lines, but in the center was a symbol I had never seen before. It looked ancient, almost ritualistic. Mark stared at the drawing, his face pale. "Where did you see this?" he demanded. Ethan hesitated. "In the basement," he admitted. My heart sank. The basement, a place I'd avoided since we moved in. It always felt unnervingly cold and unwelcoming. Mark and I exchanged a look, unspoken understanding passing between us. We had to go down there. Whatever was happening, it seemed to have started below our feet. We descended the creaking steps cautiously, each one echoing loudly in the oppressive silence. The air was damp and carried an earthy smell that made my stomach churn. Mark held the flashlight steady, illuminating the space as we moved. In the far corner, something caught the light, a faint glimmer. As we got closer, we saw it was a small box, old and covered in dust, with the same symbol etched into its surface. Mark knelt and opened the box carefully. Inside was a stack of papers and a photograph. The image sent a jolt through me. It was of a family, but not ours. They stood in front of this very house, their faces eerily familiar. Ethan pointed at the photo. "That's them," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're the ones who told me." Mark flipped through the papers, his hands shaking. They seemed to be letters, filled with warnings and pleas for help. One sentence stood out. "Once it's seen, it cannot be undone." Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed above us. Someone, or something, was inside the house. The footsteps grew louder, deliberate, each step pounding like a drumbeat in my chest. Mark gripped the flashlight tightly, his knuckles white, and I pulled Ethan closer to me. My mind raced. If whatever was upstairs had seen us, there was no turning back. Ethan pointed to the box and whispered, "We have to burn it. That's what they said." I stared at him, trying to comprehend how a child could know so much about something so terrifying. "Who told you that?" I asked urgently. His response was chilling. "The family in the picture. They said it's the only way." Mark hesitated, torn between logic and the surreal reality we were facing. "If we destroy it, what if we make it worse?" he muttered. But there was no time to debate. The footsteps stopped at the basement door, and the knob began to turn slowly. My heart felt like it would explode. Mark grabbed the box, his resolve hardening, and nodded toward the stairs leading up to the yard. "Go," he ordered. "Take Ethan. I'll handle this." "No!" I shouted, refusing to leave him behind. But before I could argue further, the basement door creaked open, revealing not a person, but a shadow, a moving, living void. It surged toward us, and in the chaos, Ethan screamed, "Burn it now!" Mark didn't wait. He dashed toward the old furnace in the corner and shoved the box inside, igniting it with a trembling hand. Flames roared to life, consuming the ancient papers and the photo. The shadow recoiled, letting out an unearthly shriek that rattled the walls. It twisted and writhed as if being torn apart. The air around us grew impossibly cold, and for a moment, I thought we wouldn't survive. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the shadow vanished, leaving only silence. We stood there, shaking and clutching one another, overwhelmed by the stillness. But as the last of the flames died out, something caught my eye in the ashes, a single piece of unburnt paper. I picked it up carefully. Written in jagged, hurried handwriting were the words, "It's not over. It never is." The basement lights flickered, and Ethan's small voice broke the silence. "They said it would come back, if we don't leave." And with that, the house felt more alive and more threatening than ever before. As we stood there in the flickering light of the basement, holding each other tightly, the weight of what had just happened began to sink in. The silence felt deafening, but it was a welcome reprieve from the chaos we'd just endured. Mark carefully sifted through the ashes with the poker, ensuring that nothing else remained of the box. Yet the unburnt paper in my hand was an ominous reminder that we weren't entirely free. Ethan tugged at my sleeve, his eyes wide and full of unspoken fear. "Mom, we have to go. They said we're not safe here anymore." His voice was steady but laced with urgency, far too mature for his age. It was a chilling thought. How much had he seen? How much did he know? And how had it all affected him? I nodded and pulled him close. Whatever answers we needed could wait. Getting out was the priority. Mark didn't argue this time. Within an hour, we were packed and driving away from the house, leaving behind everything except for what mattered most, each other. Ethan stayed silent in the back seat, clutching his favorite stuffed animal. Mark reached over and took my hand, his grip firm, as if to reassure me that we had made the right decision. I glanced back at the house one last time. Its dark silhouette stood motionless, but somehow it felt alive, like it was watching us leave. For days after, we stayed at a small motel, unsure of what to do next. We didn't talk much about that night, as if saying it aloud would give it power again. Slowly, we began to piece together a new plan for our lives. Mark suggested moving to a new city, starting fresh, and I agreed. Ethan, though quiet, seemed relieved. "It feels lighter now," he said one morning, staring out the window. His words gave me hope. Months later, in a new home filled with laughter and sunlight, the memories of that house lingered like a shadow. But we learned to live with it, to grow stronger because of it. If there was one thing we took away from the ordeal, it was this. Sometimes, letting go is the only way to truly move forward.